Hey everybody, this is TJR. I'm taking a little break from talking about music on the channel. I want to take a moment now to talk about comic books and in particular comic book films. Most notably, I want to talk about this recent news story that has been making the rounds. Joaquin Phoenix, who stars in the upcoming Joker film, which by the way, I'm really excited to see, really looking forward to watching that movie. And apparently he was doing one of these press junket interviews. If you don't know what that means, after an actor who stars in a film completes a movie, their contract requires that they do a marathon of interviews with the press. These are just fluff pieces. These are there to promote the film. This is where I've heard a lot of high-paid actors and actresses say that this is where they really earn their money because they have to do hours of these. They sometimes have to do them for days at a time, and they have to be upbeat and positive all the time while they're asked the same questions over and over and over again. So Joaquin Phoenix was doing an interview with The Telegraph with film critic Robbie Collin, and in the middle of the interview, he is asked by Robbie Collin if the Joker film might perversely end up inspiring exactly the kind of people it's about with potentially tragic results. In other words, do you think that this character you're portraying, do you think this film will create violence, that it will inspire unstable individuals to become violent and cause harm to society? Phoenix was not expecting this. He was taken aback by it. There's no footage of this that I can see, but I was able to read most of the article. And I say most of it because I had to read it through a second source. Unfortunately, in order to read the whole article, I would have to create an account with The Telegraph, which I don't want to do. But apparently he muttered, why would you? And then he paused, and then he said, no, and then he just walked out. The Telegraph reports that Phoenix left the interview for an hour and spent the time talking with a Warner Brothers press agent, that the actor returned and sat down with Collin, and he explained that he panicked because he did not consider the question, and for the rest of the interview, he did not answer that question. Most of the YouTube commentators who have discussed this incident have been very much in favor of Joaquin Phoenix walking out on the reporter because of this question, and I have to say I agree. Although I do take some exception to a comment that a lot of his defenders have stated where they've said, he's just an actor after all. I take exception to that because that's kind of like saying he's just a musician, or he's just a plumber, he's just an airline attendant, he's just a construction worker. Clearly, Joaquin Phoenix was not prepared to answer this question, and it's clear that he didn't feel qualified to answer it. But his being an actor does not make him unqualified. His individual life experience makes him unqualified. There are plumbers who are very well qualified to take on a question like that, and there are plumbers who are not qualified at all. Their profession has nothing to do with it. They're defending his decision to walk out on the interview, which, once again, I agree with. I defend it too. But at the same time, they're giving his profession a little bit of a slap across the face. Maybe it's intentional, maybe it isn't, but they're doing it just the same. I take exception to that, even though I'm not an actor. And I should mention that some YouTube commentators have certainly used this as a political whipping post for their own purposes. I'm not going to get into any of that. That's another video for another day. The other thing I'm hearing a lot of YouTube commentators state is this comment of what a weird world it is we live in now. And I guess this is because they're a lot younger than me. I am a lot older than most YouTube commentators. And I can say, as somebody who's been following popular culture since I was a teenager, which would be the 70s, which is well before the internet, this is nothing new. This has been going on for as long as I've been able to remember. During my entire lifelong passion and interest in popular culture, I have been aware of media groups, political groups, religious groups, social groups, parents groups, who have all, over the decades, in one way or another, blamed different forms of media for violent behavior. This includes motion pictures. This includes comic books. This includes television. This includes video games. And this also includes music. I remember back in the 80s, the heavy metal band Judas Priest was brought to court by the parents of two fans who attempted suicide One of them died on the scene and the other maimed himself and survived for another 3 years. The parents of these two young blamed the music of Judas Priest for inspiring them to attempt suicide. And they weren't the only band. Ozzy Osbourne had parents groups after him saying that his song Suicide Solution would encourage young kids to commit suicide. All forms of popular media, rock and roll, comic books, movies, television, video games, books, they have all been targeted by various different concerned groups, be they religious, political, societal, for inspiring destructive and violent behavior. And I remember in particular during the Judas Priest case, there was a friend that I grew up with in high school. He would always take the side of the religious, political, social groups who would say this is a bad influence on our society. This music is a bad influence. This TV show is a bad influence. This music is a bad influence. And he would always take their side. So thanks to him, I got a lot of practice with this particular argument. And as I said before, this is nothing new. But if I were sitting in that interview chair instead of Joaquin Phoenix, and I have to pause and say, this is very easy because I wasn't the one in the interview chair. I wasn't the one caught by surprise. And it's probably a lot easier for me to say this in hindsight. But if I was sitting in that interview chair and I was asked that question, the first thing I would ask the interview is, well, why do you believe this? The interviewer would probably swing it back at me and say, well, I'm asking you. And I would say, yes, but you wouldn't ask me that if you didn't believe it was true. Why do you believe that's true? And I would keep hammering that and either get him to say, I don't believe it's true, in which case he's lost the argument, or yes, I do believe it's true, in which case now he's pigeonholed himself. And then I would say what I said to that friend of mine that I grew up with who really did side with the parents trying to sue Judas Priest because they believed that their music inspired their kids to commit suicide, or with the parents groups who thought that the Matrix motion picture would somehow cause kids to go out and shoot people. If you took away that music, or if you took away that movie, removed it from the face of the earth, so it wasn't there to allegedly influence an unstable person from committing this violent act, that unstable, violent person would then find something else. They'd find something, a book, a cartoon, something, and they'd blame it on that instead. And you have to ask yourself, how far do you go with this? Do we stop creating anything? Do we stop writing books? Do we stop making movies? Do we make everything just so bland and safe that it's no longer interesting, entertaining, or thought-provoking? Because basically when you follow this line of thought, do you think that this particular piece of media will inspire violent behavior? When you follow that path, eventually you come to the point where you say, well, then we have to stop creativity. We have to stop thought. We have to stop creating media that challenges how we think about things, how we look at things. Because an unstable person could take any media and recontextualize it and reinterpret it and use that as the reason why they committed this violent act. The problem is not the motion picture or the song or the comic book or the TV show. The problem is the person. And there are much deeper and larger questions that we need to ask in dealing with the unstable person as to what creates that. Beyond, should we not have this motion picture or should we not have this music? There are plenty of kids who grew up in the 80s listening to Judas Priest who've gone on to become successful, stable individuals, raising families, running successful businesses, holding down a successful job. Why aren't we blaming Judas Priest for that? There is the possibility that a motion picture like Silence of the Lambs could inspire someone to possibly commit horrific acts of violence, and that would be horrible if that happened. But there's just as much possibility that a film like Silence of the Lambs could inspire someone to take up a profession in law enforcement and in criminal profiling. It's just as likely that a film like that could help inspire people to save lives. And this is because art and media affects us all differently. It inspires us in different ways, and it affects us in different ways. You can't control that. All you can do is present your art in the best way possible. Like I said, this question, this debate, it's nothing new. It's been going on for as long as we've had popular culture and popular media. I came to this conclusion decades ago, and in spite of even self-challenging it, I've never wavered from it. Anyways, those are my thoughts on this. Let me know what you think. I'm always interested in hearing what you have to say, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the Joker in a couple weeks. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.